Well, Ben Shapiro seems to be making the rounds with all his interviews, and I think they're trying to capitalize on this drama that they've created for themselves. Because, I mean, why else would Ben be going around doing all these interviews, talking about Candace, but then not talking about Candace at the same time? You know what I mean? Like, where he'll talk about her, he'll say that he won't talk about her, but then he'll like drop tiny little hints and details and little clues everywhere that he goes. You know, it's like, guys, if you want this controversy to go away, just come out, say the truth, and then just don't speak about it again until the controversy dies down. Or just don't speak about it again, because, you know, like what more needs to be said once you say, well, we fired her because we disagreed with her opinions. Like, you guys are a publisher. You have the right to do that. But anyways, Ben Shapiro went on the Dave Rubin show and dropped some more clues and hints as to what happened. So let's get into it.
All right, so let's do the elephant in the room for just a moment, because I saw you this week on Piers Morgan. He asked you repeatedly about Candace. You repeatedly basically said,
I won't talk about
that.
I'll say that here too.
Yeah, and that's fine. And, you know, it's interesting because we all sort of came up together to different extents, and we've all done a million things together in public events and networks and all of those things. It seems to me that at this moment, she's now a free agent. She happened to end up on Locals, which I created, and we're a platform, not a publisher that you guys are. Can you at least talk to just sort of where it's at now? She's not with you. She's free.
She's free to do whatever she wants to do, to be wherever she wants to be. And the difference between a publisher like the Daily Wire and a platform like Locals is obviously that a platform should have a very broad range of speech that it allows, including speech that maybe even the creators don't believe is inside what they would consider to be the Overton window. It's a very different thing than direct subsidization of particular opinions. So the Daily Wire would not pay a host who was staunchly pro-abortion. Mm-hmm. They'd have no obligation to pay a host who is staunchly pro-abortion. And so when it comes to the hosts on the Daily Wire, obviously everyone is able to say what they want. Nobody ever comes to me and says, you can't say X. Nobody ever says that to Walsh, and no one ever said that to Candace. But the reality is that there is an Overton window at the Daily Wire. Obviously, there was a non-meeting of the minds. That's pretty much all I can say on this. And, you know, a lot of this has happened publicly. But you know, to the extent that the Daily Wire is in fact not a publisher, it is that is in fact not a platform, it is a publisher. That means that there is no moral obligation for the Daily, and there's no free speech problem with the Daily Wire saying we don't wish to pay a particular host, or that host saying I don't wish to work here anymore, because again, there's a parting of the ways that is not really open for discussion at this point.
Does it surprise you that so many people, even on our side of this, are confused about that as it relates to free speech and quote unquote cancel culture? Like severing a business tie, as long as you're not throwing someone in jail and they're able to be everywhere else, is not.
I'm not super surprised with the controversy, honestly, because to a certain extent, I think that there's been a reaction on the right to the excesses of the left. So because what the left did is they said that the Overton window ought to be closed so tight that no one can get inside the Overton window. Basically, if you're to the right of Hillary Clinton, you can't be allowed inside the Overton window.
World,
yes, exactly. And not just with regard to platforms, but with regard to publishers. So, for example, this week, NBC News deciding that Ronna McDaniel was too much for them. Ronna McDaniel can't work at NBC News. The sacred halls of NBC News must not be sullied by the former head of the RNC. Jen Psaki, however, can have a show on MSNBC despite being the press secretary for the White House 5 seconds ago. Right? The right's response to that is, I think, correct to say you guys have shut the Overton window too tight. But I think some elements of the right have basically said there is no Overton window. The Overton window should be completely exploded with regard not just to platforms, with which I kind of agree, but with regard to publishers. So NBC News not only has an obligation to hire Ronna McDaniel, NBC News has the obligation to hire Alex Jones, for example.
Right, which just makes no sense at a business level, beyond free speech. I mean, there's a reason that networks exist.
Right, they have editorial positions. Yeah. Daily Wire has a very strong editorial position on a wide variety of issues. And by the way, I should say that there are a lot of people who are suggesting this is about disagreements over Israel. I mean, I can safely say it is not about disagreements over Israel, to the extent that, without reference to Candace at all here, Matt Walsh has taken the position that America ought not be involved in the Middle East at all. Matt Walsh's position, so far as I understand it, and I've talked to him about it, is that Israel, in a conflict between Israel and Hamas, Israel is obviously a more moral party than the genocidal terrorist group Hamas, but also it's very far away. He doesn't care, and it doesn't involve America. That's just a pure isolationist position. I disagree with it. I think it's wrong. I think that it's short-sighted. But again, he's on our platform. That is well within the range of acceptable discourse at the Daily Wire. So, the notion that you have to mirror my exact perspectives on what Israel is doing in Gaza is obviously not true, based on the roster of hosts that we currently have. There are a lot of other factors, obviously, at play.
Yeah, the more I hear Ben talk about this, the less I like the Daily Wire. I used to be a real big fan of theirs. I'm sure a lot of y'all heard already. I used to watch them every single day. But just the way that they're treating this whole Candace Owens incident, it's really rubbing me the wrong way. But hey, like Ben and Dave said, it's Ben and Jeremy's company, and if Ben and Jeremy want to make stupid decisions, then the company is going to make stupid decisions. And that's just how it's going to be because it's their company. So if you don't like what they're doing, then you should vote with your dollars because that's the only way that they'll hear you. But some interesting controversy we've got here. Censored Men on Twitter posted, bombshell leak, Candace Owens was fired for saying Christ is king. Now, I'd just like to preface this with, this is literally just a Twitter post by this guy with absolutely no proof and no evidence of anything. It's a trust me bro post. Like, you say source, this guy says trust me bro. So nobody actually knows how true this is, but I would say this is an interesting theory nonetheless. If none of it turns out to be true and it's just a theory, it's still interesting. So let's dig into it. 4 Daily Wire employees, all Christians, have approached me. Their identities will remain anonymous for safety reasons, and leaked information about an impromptu town hall that Jeremy Boring, the CEO of the Daily Wire, hosted on the day of Candace's firing. Jeremy Boring sent an email to all Daily Wire employees inviting them to an impromptu town hall in Candace Owens' studio. The town hall was led by Boring, and Andrew Klavan repeated many of the corporate talking points on his show the next day. The 4 employees told me that the town hall attempted to brainwash the employees present into believing that Candace was, in fact, an anti-Semite. They view it as an extreme form of damage control to scare and prevent employees from speaking out against Owens' firing later that day. The feeling was they didn't just want her gone, they wanted everyone to hate her like Ben does. It was straight up propaganda. These subjects were brought up during the town hall. Candace's repeated use of Christ is king was deemed as anti-Semitic. A clip of Nick Fuentes chanting Christ is king was played. A clip from Owens on Fresh and Fit was played where a ka-ching sound effect was heard in the background. The employees also told me that Ben had been bitter in his attitude towards Candace. Some employees are planning a lawsuit against the Daily Wire, feeling intimidated and threatened by the meeting, and also because of what they believe is an attack on Christianity at the company. They felt like the phrase Christ is king was seriously deemed to be anti-Semitic by Boring, Klavan, and Ben. It was Candace's repeated use of the phrase, along with her not being overly pro-Israel, that ultimately led to her firing. Blah, 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 blah. Like I said earlier, there's no proof for any of this. This is just this guy saying that people from the Daily Wire have contacted him. I mean, I wouldn't doubt it if this was true, but I mean, at the same time, it's one of those things where it's like, we have no proof other than this guy saying it. Like, no other sources that I have found have confirmed that they have talked with Daily Wire employees about this. And not only that, if it were true, somebody would have some evidence. Somebody would have an email they could show us. Somebody would have some documentation. Somebody would have some type of proof if this were true, right? But then again, it's the Daily Wire. They might have their hosts locked down so tight with legal documentation that they might not legally be allowed to share any of this information other than, anonymously talking to people on Twitter. I would say another way to confirm this would just be to have multiple different sources saying that they talk to Daily Wire employees, and all the Daily Wire employees are saying the same things, even though they're all talking to different, news sources. But as far as I can tell, this is really the only place where this news is coming from. So yeah. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Leave a like on this video and subscribe to this channel. YouTube shadow ban me, so if you don't see my videos come up in your recommended, that's why. And go follow me on Rumble if you support true freedom of speech.